episode 47. This week we're talking about tennis tech. Tennis tech. Looking forward to this. Some history.
Well, let's go fast. One, I'm surprised that we have so many people tell us that they're enjoying these podcasts. With that, I can't tell you how many people told me they can't wait for us to start talking about Vic Braden. He is the last pillar that we have to cover. We have 8 pillars of the GreatBase, but we did say that we would cover tennis tech.
Yeah, we get 1 million downloads a month. And
there is
people
a lot
are sending us gifts and all kinds of things.
There is a lot of ways to find or to hook up with the podcast, correct?
Yeah, there's all kinds of platforms. Spotify, Apple, and as well the YouTube channel. If you want to see your face for TV and my face for radio.
But those people who follow our GreatBase curriculum, Tennis Tech is where it started.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Great name.
17 sections in the USTA. One gentleman said he thinks that we have the largest tennis teaching program, largest junior program in the country, because we have so many people who follow our curriculum. And the sectionals were just played. We have quite a few kids that win matches.
Yeah.
Win tournaments.
Win the sectionals.
With Tennis Tech. We have a pathway, but we've been tweaking it since 1981. Here's something we've just done recently. We have kids ride bicycles for fitness, and we have the seats on backwards. So that way they cannot sit down.
I thought the idea of having no seats was the best.
No seats.
Impalement, but putting the seat on backwards is a great idea.
Plus soften the tires.
But it was fun to kind of see the kids going, let me figure this out. What's going on here?
The USTA, United States Tennis Association, governing body of tennis, they have USTU. And now all over the country they have, I think they have nine PTM, professional tennis management programs. And I also heard from quite a few people, they listened to a podcast recently, and it was mentioned that Ferris State was the first with Scott Schultz. Great guy, Scott Schultz, recently retired from the USTA.
Yeah.
But actually, we'll get into history of that. Ferris State was not first. Tyler Junior College was first.
Tennis Tech.
Yeah. I don't know really how many people want to listen to this. We'll go fast. Here's the story. Dennis Vandermeer is in my office, and it was a love story. Dennis Vandermeer and Pat Vandermeer. But at the moment, they were a little bit like, no, I wanted to have the summer T-shirt say this, and I want to have a summer T-shirt that. So I've got that debate going on. They're asking me for my opinion. So I'm right in the middle of that. And Dennis, he just knew what was going around, anything going on around him. And so on my desk is a proposal for Vic Braden, who's coming to visit. And we did a number of things to have people from all over come to spend a weekend with Vic. Mm-hmm. So then right at that moment, I remember Nick Bollettieri calls me up. And it was because Andy and Joe Brandy had worked for Nick. They knew what I was doing, Andy and Joe. And Nick wanted coaches. So I remember Nick, he's on the phone going, Stevie, my boy, I'll put $500 in your pocket for every coach that you send us. The summer's coming up and they need bodies.
And that was in 81, right?
Well, it took a while for it to get to the point where we would...
Or in the 80s. Yeah,
started in 81. Yeah. But it took a while before, Vandermeer was on campus. And actually, this is in my notes, but I get ahead of myself, is Jim Mantle. We're going to talk about Jim Mantle when we talk about Vic Braden. Jim's an intellectual. He was at Tyler Junior College. They had a program starting in 1974. It was never called a professional tennis management program. Mm-hmm. But I went out and checked out the school because, I was going to go back to school, and it was a great place to hit balls. So they had a general recreation. It was just called that recreation leadership. Mm-hmm. It was a general curriculum. And but it was in 1981. I'll get into that, where that's when it became Tennis Tech. That's when it became a comprehensive program for tennis teachers. So it was a 2-year program. The ones around the country now are undergraduate, graduate. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'd say that acronym PTM is a common term in the tennis industry. I've seen the name Tennis Tech.
Do we say that stands for professional tennis management, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Every once in a while, I go a little ADD.
Yeah, you got to keep me on track here.
Keeping myself on track.
I just want to go through this quickly. I mean, who wants to listen to this?
Everybody does. Are you kidding me?
So tennis tech, I mean, I've seen that as a title of an article for rackets and strings. And but in 81, I just started calling it tennis tech. I had a brother, the college he went to, a lot of the hockey players were in a program where you could become an industrial arts teacher. So it was one of the SUNY schools, State University of New York. And my brother just was original calling it O-Tech. So I said O-Tech, then I just came up with tennis tech. Didn't ask for permission. You know, what you have to do sometimes is don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. It really was interesting in the end. No one asked any questions. The program became internationally known. On the campus, so humility is a great thing.
I feel like I was going back. I feel like I've lived my life like that. Ask for forgiveness later on.
Well, the school had a group of dancers, Apache Bells. They performed at halftime for the football team. The football's a huge thing in Texas. Mm-hmm. So the Apache Bells were certainly better known than tennis tech throughout the U.S., especially. When I was there twice in the 80s.
They make Djokovic look bad.
Yeah, as far as the high kick. And
they go like reverse 20.
They went to the Super Bowl twice, and they went to that White House twice when I was there.
Yeah.
Where I know Jim Lair, he's one of our pillars, and we're going to interview him. What we're going to do is just keep going back and trying to solidify what's behind the GreatBase. And this year number 1, we're almost through with it. We'll cover tennis tech, and then we're going to cover Vic Braden in detail.
Yeah.
But here's a story with Jim Lair. I just made a bet with one of the staff. And that's another thing, too, is that I was really the only full-time faculty person. It was students running students. It was frustrating at the time, but we look back at that with pride, really, that we accomplished so much with so little. Mm. So the Apache Bells, if it seemed like if there was one, there was 100 of them, and they would do this high kick.
Yeah.
So I had professional photographers there. I had scaffolding put up, and we had lines people, the umpire in the outfit, and we had 2 people playing.
Yeah.
And we had a point where we had over 100 students, but then we opened it up to people on campus to come. We created a little stadium, which the college didn't have, a tennis stadium. Put the bleachers on one court.
Yeah.
But we got members of the band there. I mean, we got the band there.
Yeah.
The tubas.
Yeah.
And then it was all the girls to line up, and they were going to do the high kick. And the bet was, I'll get this photo in Tennis Magazine. So this is a great story for flexibility. So I knew the director of the program quite well, and I said, okay, we just need to have the girls do the high kick. We'll take a few photos, and we can be out of here.
Yeah.
And she said, I thought it was just a photo shoot. They didn't stretch. And I said, please, please. Anyway, there was no high kick, and there was no getting the photo in Tennis Magazine.
It's kind of like with the Vic Braden story, which we'll get into, where, with the world class sprinter, it's like, okay, yeah, she does her sprint, and then it's like, okay, yeah, that was great. Now can you do it again? And it's like, all right, in 45 minutes.
I was a preparation. I was the gopher. Go for this, go for that. It was Evelyn Ashford.
Yeah,
and she took forever to get ready to run 40 yards. And at that time, getting aerial, and Vic Braden had this track and force plates and.
Yeah.
And then she only thought she had to run it once. They said, okay, you run it again. And Vic is so funny. It was like, I thought we just have one more donut and then she would run. But she took like 40 minutes to get ready again.
Low-cal donut.
So many people to thank looking back at it. One, unsung hero, Lugene Wilson. She was in the mailroom. She was excellent with the English language, and she was an excellent typist. As far as politics on campus and what went on, she had already worked there for so many years. She was a tireless worker. She liked honesty. It was one interesting point to make, the connection for the program. She really helped me behind the scenes back in those days, send letters out. I had a system I would take a yellow notepad and just, you send the same letter to all these people. Mm-hmm. But, it was, hand type, basically each one. At the end of my tenure, there was really a lot of politics. It didn't even allow me to send mail overseas. They wanted to reduce the number of foreign students we had. it's interesting. They were interested in stopping the number of foreign students we had who paid full tuition.
Yeah.
And then they had all these foreign tennis players.
Don't want no outsiders coming there.
It was
Tennis Tech in Texas.
There was a little backyard mentality.
Come on now.
Tyler, Texas.
What are these guys doing here? Coming over here from Sweden. We ain't taking none of them. Just kidding. I know you don't talk like that in Texas.
No, I actually teach people how to speak Texan. CM Snakes, Emmer not steaks.
Emmer.
OSAR.
OSAR.
LIB.
LIB.
CM BDIs. MR Snakes.
I seen them, Peter.
And this was Tyler. A lot of beautiful people in Tyler, but it was pretty backward in one sense. Where I remember Bob Caudell became a great friend of the program. I was young, 26 years old, and he said, "Where are you from, boy?" I said New York. And when back in the day, you tell somebody if you're from New York, they thought you were from 42nd Street, and he just said, "You're not going to make it in this town." That's where the bumper stickers said "Freeze a Yankee." Terrible, terrible, terrible.
Oh man.
But the tennis education was only one part of the Tennis Tech experience. Like anything, there's just a lot more to tennis than just how do you hit a tennis ball.
Some politics.
We had our own stationery. We had our own logo.
Logo's great. I actually want to bring that out and make some retro hoodies.
Well, one thing with that logo is that we had, it was a circle. It wasn't really fancy. A tennis ball in the middle, or on the top it said tennis, and the bottom said tech. And then we had a tennis tech club. Where in the middle it said TJC, Tyler Junior College.
Yeah. Then
we had tennis club. Then in the middle, it said tennis on the top and tech in the middle, club.
Yeah. No, look cool, I think.
But back to Lou Jean, I was really the only one that knew what she was doing. She understood all the characters at the college and who were the givers and who were the takers. Mm-hmm. The story of the podcast may be of interest to those with a GreatBase curriculum. If you want to stop and wait for the one on Vic Braid, please do so. But it was a pathway for players, parents, teachers, and coaches.
No, I think it's important to note. I mean, most people don't understand that this really was the first PTM program, and there's history to it. And I think, I don't know what people may have tried to take from it or copy or whatever, but there's some, and it was successful. What was the highest? Over 100, right?
108.
108.
With
something was going on there.
But like anything, there's a story of circumstances. But that's where it started. I was 26 years old, and by the time I was there underway, digging away.
That's a story in itself.
With
26,
but I'd been trained by Vic Braid and Dennis Vandermeer and Welby Van Horn.
Yeah.
And then, certainly we talk about Jim Burdick and Jim Lair and Bill Jacobson, Peter Burwash, Harry Hoffman, and then others. Mm-hmm. People who've listened so far, they know my first love was ice hockey. That was my drug. Born into a hockey family right near the Canadian border. I played hockey 15 years.
Lightning are about to seal the deal. Getting close.
Actually, I'd been in tennis for like 3 years, and one of my brothers, the assistant coach with the New York Rangers, but they were hosting the Masters, the ATP Masters. So I went and stayed with my brother, and I went to watch all these matches. It was great. I remember watching Berglund coach Borg for the first time, that's another story. I was in Sweden watching that.
Yeah.
Tiriac, Seguro, but because the practices were closed, they were in the Felt Forum. So anyway, I was in New York for a couple of weeks, and so I skated with the Rangers.
Yeah.
And John Ferguson was the GM. I went right in the locker room and go, "I'm ready. Where do I sign?" I played prep hockey.
What did he say?
He did smile a little bit. I think at the prep school I played, I still follow that. College, they do quite well. College, you get to the age, what are you going to do for a living? From a big family, I do think with big family, there's a lot of learning from just your siblings. What do they do? Mm. At that time, U.S. hockey players, you just weren't going to the NHL. There were 6 teams, almost 100% Canadian. People didn't go over and say, well, I'll go play club hockey in Europe, play at a lower level. And hockey wasn't played by women at that time. And people still ask, why didn't you become a hockey coach? And I said, wasn't thinking about it at the time.
Yeah.
I would love to have been a hockey coach.
Yeah.
But, I do think in tennis, what happens is a lot of people they got a rich uncle and they go out and they play the qualifiers for 15Ks. And,
Yeah.
they're really, really not good enough. But there's so many opportunities for people to play low-level tennis. Not so much in hockey. It's really after college, you can play beer league hockey.
Yeah, unless you go to Europe, right? I mean,
Well, no, back then.
Gotcha.
It was even wealthy people back in my day, they didn't get on airplanes. You took the Greyhound bus. This is interesting to me, perhaps, maybe a couple of people out there, is that my tennis career really started with
Look, out of a million, there's some.
with the U.S. hockey coaches. A couple of U.S. hockey coaches drinking vodka in Russia. That's one of the reasons that I'm in tennis.
Vodka.
I'll tell you why. My freshman year of college, I make the varsity team. I end up having an ankle operation, but my second year is when I said, okay, I'm going to make this switch to start pursuing tennis.
Yeah.
But when I was a freshman could play on the varsity. My older brothers, when they were freshmen, they couldn't play on the varsity, and that's something I think that would help tennis. Because when kids went to school, it's just that first year is a developmental year.
Yeah.
Because kids come out of juniors, they're not ready for college tennis. I mean, doubles, they don't even know where to stand. Andy's done this. We have these segments called Steve Stories. In the background, there's a wooden frame with my name on it, Smith.
Yeah.
And that's a name from a hockey jersey where was in college.
Go check it out on YouTube. Steve Stories, you'll see the sign.
My brother's wife, she got the name tag. So when there was a tryout, all the name tags were ordered for the Canadians, not the Americans. So the name like Smith, I mean, I have three brothers. One of my other brothers, he had played there and he had finished. And so, okay, I just knew that, okay, I made the hockey team, but they didn't order a name tag for me. They had already ordered the name tags before the tryouts.
They just figured there weren't going to be any Americans.
Kids, some kid could.
Is that what it was, really, though? Like, well, we just know we're not going to have any Americans. Whatever the Canadian.
Well, the name tags were ordered for the Canadian kids. I mean, at that time, Americans, we had a little chip on our shoulder because we weren't even getting a look.
Yeah.
That's where the Olympics in 1980, when the Americans won, it was called a miracle.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I could just digress on every comment where my son Connor, we had a young Russian player. My son Connor's 13, the Russian kid Roman, he's 13. Couldn't speak English. We go to watch the movie Miracle, and my son Connor's chirping away, and he goes, "We kicked your fanny, Dad. We kicked your butt, da 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 da." And the Russian kid just broken English. All he could say, "That's why they called it Miracle."
So, that is what you call miracle. Yeah.
So anyway, I had surgery, and
didn't come back. That was it.
No, so
I'm talking like Texan. You hear that? Didn't come back.
It was one of my oldest brothers in Moscow, and they're studying Russian hockey. In '72, the Russians came over. They shocked the Canadians, and it was just a hot ticket to go learn about Russian hockey.
Yeah.
And this goes way back, where a coach made me a defenseman so his son could be center. And I thought that was the only person in the world that would happen to. But there really shouldn't be parent coaching in team sports. Mm. So. I just heard this. Well, the coach thinks your brother's too small. Da 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 da. And, and then plus I knew in the back of my head where, geez, last year, with the name tags. So I had, fallen in love with knocking some tennis balls around. I remember after I had this operation, a coach said, the Dr. Pike, an orthopedic surgeon, said, "What do you do?" I go, "I like to run distances. I just go for long runs." Mm-hmm. "What else do you like to do?" I said, "I started knocking some tennis balls around." He said, "Why don't you do that?" So I started hitting some tennis balls. Then I met a guy by the name of Dave Eddy. Back in the day, you hitchhiked everywhere. And on the same road my parents had their home on East Lake Road, Dave Eddy, he picked me up all the time. We started hitting tennis balls. And, through him, it was the first time I ever went to a tennis club. He's the first tennis teaching pro I ever met. I mean, I had nothing to do with the hockey world in it. But tennis was booming.
So those two guys need to be thanked, though. I mean, the ripple effect, right? We talk about that when we wheel with Vic Braden. Lawrence Alto going, hey, well, you can either go to jail for stealing tennis balls or learn how to play tennis.
Yeah.
I mean, what a moment.
With
how many lives were affected, you know?
Yeah, again, story, circumstance. So it wasn't simple to leave hockey. I mean, I'm the youngest of 6. 5 had already graduated from college, and my father's like, 5 down, 1 to go. Of course, young boys will talk to their mother before they talk to their father. And so I withdrew from school, college dropout, and also too, I mean, I had gone to, my father was, all he asked me about was my report card. They were certainly into education. So, so they had the idea in the back of my head to go to school, but I was told I was going to learn to teach and coach tennis. I need to learn how to play.
Yeah.
So I put myself through the school of hard knocks. I became a full-fledged tennis bum. I'm really proud of the fact I got on an airplane. I went to Fort Lauderdale.
Long hair, living in a van, busting out Led Zeppelin all day.
I wasn't good enough to live in a van at first, travel around to tournaments. So, but I remember I flew to Fort Lauderdale. It was the first time I was ever on an airplane. Got off the plane, did not know one person. But I was told to go to Boca Raton because it's a wealthy area and I could work as a waiter at night.
Yeah.
I remember I had $1,100 in my pocket. So I think of it as the story of being an immigrant, but I could speak the language. It wasn't like I was going to a new country and had to learn a new language.
Yeah.
But I had to really start from there. So I was just shy. I was 19 years old. I was just shy of being 20. But I was on a mission to pursue a career in tennis teaching coaching. Now, I didn't have delusions of grandeur that I was going to become a touring pro, but it was certainly appealing to knock some balls around. So 15 years of hockey, and I played every little sport, every little kid sport. Mm-hmm. I think all young boys, I think, should play football in America. Just maybe the sport should eventually become obsolete because of concussions, but hockey is a collision sport.
Yeah. There's
so much to learn from if you have your head down. Yeah. Cross country is a character builder. I one time ran a 15:21 3-mile. So I was really born into jockocracy. My father was an engineer, but hockey was his love. He was a hobby coach.
Just explain that to our listeners for those that may not really understand that term. Yeah,
that's from Howard Cosell. You got to read his book. He didn't play the game, and he was with. Help me out here. It was Don Meredith, and he played for the. I'll get his name in a second. But so you're in the booth. There's 3 of you, and 2 of you played. And they weren't listening to.
And then you got the color guy. I mean,
they weren't listening to Howard Cosell because he didn't play the game, and so that's where the term. So he didn't think that he was on the inside with jockocracy. But I had zero background in tennis. When I was a kid, I thought a tennis court was for street hockey. I had no advisors, no mentors, no direction.
It's kind of like, but you think you understand sports, right? Competition.
No, it's like the term brain memory. Way back when we knew if you want to be good at anything,
locker room lingo.
You had to do it over and over again.
Yeah.
But I became the perennial tennis bum of Boca Raton. I worked nights, take the role of the starving artist. Mm-hmm. I was told by my oldest brother to surround myself with people who knew what they were doing. But at the same time, you have to understand, what did I know? I couldn't tell good from bad. But I wasn't learning tennis through osmosis. I wasn't 9 years old. I was 19.
Yeah.
So the more I read, the more I listened. So my brother, he had got a start in pro hockey by studying hockey systems. The Russians, but then hockey in Sweden, hockey here, hockey there, hockey everywhere. But to study systems, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's still very rare.
Yeah.
A system just being an organized plan.
Yeah.
After 3 years, the idea was to put myself back on a college campus. So Tyler Junior College had a tennis teaching program, but it was only it was just one class, and it was one optional lab in a lot of ways. The late Fred Niffen, he was Fred Niffen, he was a tennis coach.
Good old Fred.
Unfortunately, Fred is no longer with us. He passed away. Beloved man, a lot of followers. Mm-hmm. But he was hired to teach the one class, but he was really hired for the tennis teams. And at first, he waved the American flag. He wasn't going to have foreigners.
Yeah.
But eventually he had, I ran the program twice when they were between coaches, throughout the 80s. And when I ran it one time, there was a girls team and the boys team. And as far as lineup, there was one American. As I said, recreation leadership, one class a semester. There was sports like leisure services, water-related sports, parade management.
Parade management.
Yes, parade
Texas,
management.
Baby. That's awesome.
But by then I knew I could practice all day anywhere. And, the idea is like, well, maybe I'll take a path where I become a college coach. Mm-hmm. So, you do have to think, okay, you have to have the sheepskin. It was the 70s, tennis having boomed and was booming. There was groups within groups. So again, initially when I went to Tyler, there was really no foreign players. Mostly Texas kids who were good, solid players. But there was a group of students, and that's where I mentioned Jim Mantle earlier. Mm-hmm. He was a fellow New Yorker. Two types of New Yorkers: Slicks from the city and Hicks from the country. But
you was a Hick.
No, he's from the city. So he's
but you was a Hick.
Yeah, I'm a Hick. I'm from the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I'm from the snowbanks. 85 miles south of Montreal. So he's an intellectual, older. He left a position in the medical field. He was just really well read. Certainly at that time, and we'll talk about Vic. Vic came into everybody's living room when he was doing these PBS commercials. But Jim was really well read in tennis. And then he had gone out to the Vic Braden Tennis College. I remember he came back and just, told me about my serve and my forehand and
United States Tennis Academy, USTA.
But I, just cold turkey because I just knew sports. I was like, hey kid, you're doing this wrong. It's like if you've got three older brothers, again, being the youngest in a family of 8, I tell people I had 3 sets of parents. I have 2 sisters that would tell me what to do at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. 2 brothers that would tell me what to do at the drop of a hat. One easygoing brother, he let me off the hook. And then I had my own 2 parents. So I had 6 parents. That's a good thing. Yeah. I didn't think it so much at the time. But
yeah, right.
But Jim, certainly he had the intellectual curiosity. You just... I have all these brothers and sisters that have all done these different things. My mother was pulled out of college to become a secretary in the War Department, and she didn't go back. But she could read a book in a snowstorm. Mm-hmm. And I have an uncle, my Uncle Carl. He just was always reading, and really, it comes right down to it. That's how you want to determine who's the smartest, who reads the most. Yeah, that's pretty much a given. So I spent 12 months in Tyler. But I was there and I saw what was going on, and but I continued to be
as a student.
Yeah, as a student. So I continued to hit balls. You asked about living in a van, so I wasn't good enough to live in a van at first. You have to be pretty good to live in a van to go play the tournaments, even though it's a statement where you're not that good. Yeah, because you're living in a van. You don't have that much rent money. I really think all tennis teachers should be volunteers. I volunteered, just really out of principle, but I think that if I started teaching tennis, my brothers would have, especially 2 out of the 3 for sure. It just give you a hard time. Like, how could you be teaching tennis? How could you be accepting money? You just started to play, especially if you spent all these years, and there's so many different levels in hockey. Yeah, which I talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. You're in the squirt division. You're in the Pee-wee division. Not tennis kids.
You're 14? Yeah, you're Pee-wee.
I'm in the high performance. I'm in the elite program. Yeah. I think you have to work for free to pay your dues. I just don't think people should be paid initially. The way it really works out, you should be paying them. Mm. Tyler, Texas, there's which it wasn't affiliated with the college, but there was a place called the Barber College. I remember one time I got a haircut there.
Be careful. Almost lost your ear.
Well, I left with a Band-Aid. Fred Niffen, humble, quiet man. He did build a championship culture, had winning teams. His lecture class, by no means was a priority. anybody who has two tennis teams, that's not a negative. Anybody who has two tennis teams, it's a bear to coach one tennis team. Mm-hmm. I think of one of our students over at St. Leo, Chad Berryhill, coaching two tennis teams. There was 2 morning clinics a week, and I would say almost no one showed up. You could go volunteer at one of the local clubs. It wasn't really that organized. So I would say Fred was very open to listen to ideas. He listened to people like Jim Mantle from their own study, but he was not in a position where he really could implement that. He didn't really have a support staff. In fact, he didn't even have an assistant coach at one time. He stepped it up with foreign players. To just give you an idea of how competitive junior college was in the 70s, 80s, I just tell people in Florida alone, there were 32 men's teams. Yeah. And now there's 0. Yeah. A little unfortunate. Back in the day, this happens to a certain extent now, but say TJC, Tyler Junior College, or USC, University of Southern California, foreign players would come over and they really wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah. TJC, USC?
And as a result, there was some really, really good tennis players that played at Tyler Junior College. I think of Riccardo Acioli at one time, and I remember running practices, for a short period of time with called them the boys from Brazil. They had 5 players in the starting lineup, and the rules weren't as tough. One of the players, I remember him coming up to me, he goes, "This is really not my name, Steve." And it was a young guy he goes, "I'm 25 years old. I'm an engineer. I have 2 children." And just one of his buddies said, "Do you want to play?" And he just came in, played 1 semester. The NCAA, people say no clue about athletics, but there's a reason there's so many rules. Yeah. But Fred, again, he didn't know that. What he knew was he had one player from Brazil who said, "You have a friend who's a little better than you," and then he could just reload. There wasn't a limit on how many scholarships he could have. He could just ask one of the donors.
Still like that today too. You see if the coach is from South Africa, you get a lot of South African players or whatever it is.
No, there's been teams
like that.
Teams where every player is from South Africa, every team's from Sweden.
Yeah.
But when the internet came out, now you can win up to $10,000 playing tennis and still be an amateur. Yeah. But when the internet came out, remember one of the players at Baylor one time, a photo came out and he's holding up a check, and there's photos of it, and then it's in question: is he an amateur? This is many, many years ago. Yeah. So go back to 81. That's 40 years ago. So a couple of years after leaving Tyler, I was driving from one coast to the other. I stopped in Tyler. I was actually on my way to go back to Vic Braden's for a second time. And, Fred asked me to work with his daughter, Judy. So I was there. I worked a little bit with his daughter. I remember her because I later, when I went back, I continued to work with Judy. I remember her thanking me. She became an All-American. I picked Vic out as the best one to study. It's like, okay, I put myself in a position where okay, should I try to work for Burwash? Should I try to work for Hopman? Should I try to work for Vandermeer? I want to circulate around these people as much as possible. But if I could spend time with one, I picked out Braden because I just thought that he had the most information.
Was that after you had spent some time with Dennis and Welby?
But back and forth. I can remember I had spent time with Braden, and went back to Vandermeer. So, we talked about Vandermeer and Van Horn. With Van Horn, for example, I went there. My father, he thought at one point I was the smartest of his 6 kids because I was working for All American Sports. I was working in Florida in the winter, and All American, and in New England in the summer. Yeah. And so, your father wants to know, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going to resign. It was just 2 years. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, what you have to keep in mind is that back then, the tennis boom, they line you up with free clothes, free shoes, free rackets. free place to stay. In Boca, they'd rented a townhouse, or in the summer, you'd stay in a dorm. Or maybe it was a resort in the summer and they'd rent a home for the coaches. And you have a salary, you're getting a percentage of your lessons, you're living, you're eating at the hotel.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to go work for this guy with Welby Van Horn. What are you going to get paid? First thing,
Yeah.
we are gainfully employed. I said, I'm going to get paid $125 a week. Well, how long is that? 8 weeks. And then what are you going to do after that? Well, I'm going to go, I've made some arrangements. I met this guy and that guy, and we talk about Vic Braden. I mean, how I met Vic Braden. Well, I get into that during the Braden thing. I said, well, I'm going to go work for this guy Braden for free. My father's going, shrewd, really shrewd. And, but back, so when I first got in tennis, the tennis was booming. So someone my father's age was like, when are you going to get a real job?
Yeah, exactly.
Because there wasn't really a coaching industry per se. So I got a little off track with that. But coming back to Braden, so it was very interesting to go back to Vandermeer's after I'd been at Braden's. But how I ended up spending so much time at Vandermeer's with Dennis is that he had the professional tennis registry. Then my job at one point was to get other people's jobs, tennis tech. They had occupational competency as tennis teaching pro managers. But Van Horn, I was just lucky because the operation moved to Pinehurst, North Carolina. My parents retired, 5 miles from where Welby was teaching in the summer. And then I became director of Scusa Bassett, which is right where now it's Chris Everts. But at that time, Welby, they moved the operation to the Boca Hotel. So I was just fortunate to be around him other than that one summer. And then I just took it upon myself. I can remember hanging out with Welby at the nursing home. Where he's in his 90s. But when I went to Braden's, so I'm there a second time, and we'll go through that where I was out there. I didn't want to quit my job. I knew how to be the starving artist. So when I went to Braden's, I was living in my van, working nights. And I'm just Vic's gopher. If he's not there, or I'm teaching a couple sessions as a volunteer, getting criticized, critiqued by the staff, and Evelyn Ashford is like, I can go hang out with Vic today and do that. So I was, I really got to the point where, I don't really want to work here. I just want to be here. And to be Vic's gopher was, I thought, much better to be a staff. But then Mary Lay, who was his director of tennis, summer came around and she said, you have to work. And so I started working. But Fred called me up when I was on the Vic Braden staff. He's from Abilene. He had a friend who wanted to coach, and he asked me if I was interested because, certainly, working for someone like Braden, people in the industry would just know that, or they would even ask. You weren't. It wasn't like you were paid a ton of money. You make a lot more money as a country club pro or a club pro. But luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. Luck is when you know the right person. I mean, the person at the top. The person was the late Eugene Allen, Dr. Eugene Allen. So when I was in Tyler, I was a court rat. I knew I had to be able to hit the ball. And that's the first thing you're asked, how well do you play? And, can you hit?
Sure.
So Dr. Allen, he was a good tennis player. He loved to play. He's a guy who was slide the ball, side spin forehand, throw up the lob. And, just
all the junk.
It's like Martinez's mother, when Martinez was at both Bollettieri's and Saddlebrook, the mother said, hit with anybody and everybody. Younger kids, just to see how the ball comes off the racket, read the racket.
Yeah, smart.
So, I literally practiced anytime I was not in class. On the weekends, I practiced from, sun up to sundown. People who were there at that time.
And unfortunately, you had the wrong freaking grip on your forehand.
Really, when it comes down to, plus I had started playing tennis when I was 19 with the calculation. But really, my tennis bum days, I took lessons. I took lessons from a name pro, great guy. You learn from everybody. But I've been taking lessons from him a year and a half.
Kept that penny on edge.
And his son his son had, he was one of the best juniors in the country, played at Georgia. And I remember hitting with Peter Fleming. I was just hanging out at the Boca Hotel, Warren Woodcock. And I just had some savvy for sports. I said, well, Peter, I can hook you up with a better player to practice with. And by far. And so it happened. I can remember I said, I'll call up. It was Ed Foster. I called up Ed Foster, Tommy Foster. I said, just hit everything to his forehand. Just everything to his forehand. Don't even have to move him. Hit everything to his forehand. And I just remember Peter Fleming, going by and watching him practice, sit down watching it. So anyway, Dr. Allen, I hit with him once a week. And, some people say, you'll play with me? Yeah, I'll play with anybody else. Every Tuesday evening, you come out here, I'll play with you.
Yeah.
But I knew someone like a Dennis Vandermeer, you just put a ball on a dime.
Yeah.
You need to be able to, in fact, we used to practice so much that you could play, I'll play you, looping the ball, I'll play you serving volleying, but I didn't know it at the time, but Dr. Allen was the president of the board of trustees. It's like, oh, and I didn't, even years later, I didn't realize how powerful he was until I worked at another college. So I think, being 10 years and 15 years on these two junior college campuses. But he knew I was on a mission to become a high-level tennis teacher, a high-level tennis coach. He was a dentist, and he had set up a program for dental hygienists. So, so when Fred Niffen called me up,
this is at Tyler, right?
Yeah, at Tyler Junior College. So, during that year I was there, that he asked if Fred Niffen calls me up and asks if I want to go to Abilene, and I remember saying no. I said if I come to Texas, I would be interested in having the program become a full-time program. That. And Fred Niffen, he knew his hands were really tied with running two tennis teams. And there was enough students there. Like when I was there was, I could just, I could Danny Cooper and Jim Mantle and Mike Duncan and just name people that they were there. Like I was there. It's like, okay, you can learn how to teach tennis here.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really that in depth. I mean, it was just, it's like when the first college I went to, the hockey coach had a course. I think just about every school does. I remember Coach Schneider at the University of Texas. We spoke at a couple functions, and we were so honored to have him ask us to keep sending materials because he was teaching a class on how to coach tennis. So then I started to communicate with Dr. Allen. And, he knew my interest. So that was interesting, starting off with a story about having Dennis Vandermeer in the office and, a file on the desk with, Vic Braden coming in and Nick Bollettieri calling me up.
Yeah.
You turn the clock back just a couple of years before that, it was, it could be Jim Mantle and I on the bleachers. Braden does it this way and Vandermeer does it this way. I remember actually going to Vandermeer's with Jim Mantle. I think if you read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, is this
story of circumstance.
We immersed ourselves into teaching tennis.
Yeah.
And like, what is the best way? We didn't know. But Eugene Allen, he had the power of pen. So I was in Tyler 10 years, 81, 91. Another time I ran a co-op on a junior college campus. When I ran a co-op, Hillsborough Community College in Tampa, so I ran a private business. We were in charge at one point of the PE instruction. We ran it in the spirit of the public. We did free clinics, a $1 clinic. With that, we started, running. They didn't have a men's team, but we ran the women's team. And so the athletic director. Well, I was really on staff. It was you don't really hear of this so much as the director of tennis who doesn't coach. With like say a Ty Tucker is the director of tennis. So now that means basically that the women's coach works for him.
Yeah.
I look at it that way. They really have some clout.
Yeah.
With what happens on their own facility. So, here we are. We're running the tennis team. We won a national championship. at this school in Tampa, but I could never get a tennis teaching program started. I was with Craig Tiley and Jennifer Roberts at the University of Illinois. There was a point where the University of Illinois and the city were going to combine and have an effort. I remember being in meetings. That's another story. Mm-hmm. But with, because there were some reasons that it was like, well, okay, we can do this, but we can do it better, even though I think there was a lot of positives with Tyler Junior College. And I'll get into that with, but anyway, at this school in Florida, we never put together what Eugene Allen could do. He was, again, president of the board of trustees. Mm-hmm. And, certainly he loved tennis, and he had set this program for dental hygienists. That's where I say it was just a matter of luck. Preparation opportunity met. Yeah. As he was the one who could open the door for it to really happen. Mm-hmm. To change a curriculum. We'll go through that a little bit. But at this school in Florida, you had to be able to prove that for every graduate, there was a job in the same county. And that's not going to happen. You're not going to take one county and say, okay, how many students do you think I can have? I think I can have 100. Yeah. So you're going to graduate 50, a 2-year program, and are you going to be able to find 50 jobs in the same county? Yeah. And I said, we need to just change that. But that's the way it was. I know Fred, he saw how quickly his daughter was improving, and he was really intrigued. He also, I think everybody at that time was following, even, though it was through television or through Tennis Magazine, was following Vic Braden. Right. Dennis Vandermeer too, but Braden, he was coming into everyone's living room. Yeah, he's a superstar. I can remember, we're talking about All-American Sports, I was offered this job at Half Moon Bay in Jamaica for the company. And, okay, that sounds cool. I'll go be the director of tennis at this resort. But at that time, this was before I really studied under Braden. You had to go in as an American, and you had to train all Jamaicans to be your pros. And I didn't think that I was qualified or knowledgeable enough to train the coaches. But after just, having, some solid time with Braden, then I was very confident that, then you just find out what the industry norm is and all the myths. So within just a short period of time, I went from turning a job down because I didn't think I could train some local people, some of the Jamaicans. It could have been anywhere. But then it's like after spending time with Braden, I said, no, I'm pretty sure I could train coaches. You can teach somebody to say bacon with a Jamaican accent. How do you do that? You say beer. Beer. And can. Can. Now say it together with a little bit of a... Beer can. Yeah, beer can. Beer can, man. Would you like some beer can? That's good. With Andy Dandy. After this first year, we get through this tennis tech and the 8 pillars. We needed... I don't have any beer can anymore because my wife and I are vegan. We don't have much bacon going on. Actually, they got all kinds of fake. Is there bacon in beer? Fake meat. That's a good question. I don't think so. It was interesting, I had this possibility. It was just a possibility to go to Tyler Junior College and have this green light to change this curriculum, revise the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to say, I'm the mastermind. I would say that Eugene Allen was the mastermind. He's the one who said, yes, this can be done. Yeah. So I had a contract with Vic, having been in Southern California staff. I was going to go to Europe to work for Vic. Yeah. And it was something that was appealing to me. Of course, when you go to Marbella, Spain, everybody's resorts are speaking German. That's pretty nice. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I was going to work in Reidenwinkel in the summer in the Alps. And then I was going to work in Marbella in the winter. Man. And I was all pumped to go do that. Yeah. And I remember being offered to go work in Europe at that time when I first started working for Vic. And I said, well, do you want to be a head coach? You're not a head coach for Vic right now. And I said, no. I said, I want to learn tennis before I learn German. I said, I need to spend more time here to learn tennis. Yeah. So I had this clause in this contract. So the Tyler Junior College job opened up. I can remember being at the U.S. Open, and school had already started but it took Eugene Allen, I didn't get there till the very end of September, the fall of 81, but he made it happen. So, but after a very short period of time, by my second year in Tyler, I ended up working for Vic as a consultant in Europe because he was hiring people I taught. Mm-hmm. And that was the beauty of being a school teacher. I didn't realize it at the time. You don't know how good you have it where, oh, you mean I have the summers off?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that, you just, you learn the hard way. There were some hiccups. A man named Elmer Hayden was the assistant dean. The first dean I was under was Richard Menner. I remember calling me into his office and saying that we're trying to make too many changes and you can't do it all in one year. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to change all the whole curriculum. I needed 14 signatures and 7 committees. Keep in mind, I mean, what type of formal education did I have? I just had clinical experience.
Yeah. That's where it's like, just do it. Ask forgiveness later, right?
No, not that situation.
Not that. Okay.
14 signatures, 7 committees.
You got to have it.
You got to meet in front of people and say, this is why we want to change.
Yeah.
And I'll read through the courses here in a second. We'll sign off. We'll do this over 2 parts. Yeah. I just remember telling him, I said, I've already told people we're going to have this full-fledged tennis teaching program. People are coming here. Yeah. I'm writing people. I get Eugene Wilson. We're sending letter after letter out. Just had a small classified ad in Tennis Magazine. Yeah. There was no internet. I just showed up with 2 duffel bags and said, okay, I'm going to make something special happen here. And because I knew it needed to happen. Tennis teachers needed, they still do. Yeah. I understand it now. There's such a shortage of
now
tennis
more
teachers.
Than ever. Yeah.
I think that's one thing too, if anybody who's running a PTM program wants a little advice, give me a call.
Yeah. Why it took so long?
With, so young at 26, but I do enough about respect and resentment. And I knew I was going to go over this gentleman's head as the assistant dean, Elmer Hayden. And it was, he was upset. But I went to Eugene Allen, just told him, I said, I'm going to have to leave. I said, I'm here to make this happen. I would have rather been in Marbella than in Tyler, Texas, really going at a snail's pace, trying to make some improvements. Yeah. But I just remember he said, just give me 48 hours. Yeah. And so 48 hours, sure enough, he comes over, finds me, comes to campus, and he says, it's all taken care of. Yeah. Any changes you want, they will be made. So, then it's like, wow, I got a few people on campus that are a little upset with me, like, who's this guy? Yeah. How is he doing this? Yeah. But it was one person who just really loved tennis, but he knew to the length that what I had done, but he really didn't know, like the Jim Mantles and the Danny Coopers, the Mike Duncans, and there was obviously it started in '74. I was there in '77 for a year, and it's just we wanted to learn, and we were at least exploratory for sure. Mm-hmm. Anyone has read job ads where it says the equivalency of, that's how I qualified. Mm. So you obviously you can qualify for, say to work on one part of college if you're in the technology versus the arts and science, and so most department heads have PhD. Now, it's interesting was I went back with the idea that I was going to go to this University of Texas at Tyler. It was called East Texas at one point. So have my clinical experience. I'm signing up. Okay. And Richard Menner, remember when he was a very competent, very professional guy. He was the dean. So that's who I'm going to work for. Calls me up. And he remember him saying, I said, yeah, I'll be there. And he goes, well, don't you want to know what you're going to make? And I said, oh yeah. What am I going to make? I had no interest in what I was going to make. Yeah. He said, you'll make $13,000 a year. If I had a PhD, I would have made $14,000. So I called my mother up, who awesome. She helped my brother earn a PhD because she typed a lot of papers. I said, hey, next time you see Mike, tell him his PhD is only worth $1,000.
$1,000.
Piled higher and deeper. I would say to this day, people are still shocked by, and I think of myself as a hockey person, the way hockey people talk versus the way tennis people talk. Hey, call them up. Tell them that PhD is only worth $1,000. To digress, when a hockey player is in a locker room, they get chirped the moment they walk in.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, they love me. I mean, you just walk in, everybody just starts giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
Not in tennis. So the existing courses, leisure services, water-related sports, parade management, parade management. I mentioned that in a previous podcast, water-related sports. I hook up with the aquatics director to the YMCA. I said, hey, you got to help me teach this class. You teach this class. I'll set up a free program for you on your 2 courts.
Yeah.
I had to honor the curriculum I inherited for just that 1 year. And it's a long time. One school year, it's only 16 weeks a semester. But I, certainly met with city officials right away. We were doing free clinics on the parks. We were, there was a city official that actually helped with parade management. Like, what are you going to do? Be one page ahead of that one
How
chapter.
many high schools were around?
I could tell you there was Robert E. Lee, John Tyler, and the Catholic school TK Gorman. There was 3 high schools. There's so many stories involved in all this. With little or no help, I wrote the curriculum. It wasn't like, who at campus can you see about, okay, we're going to have scientific approach to teaching tennis.
Yeah.
So it was 60 hours. It was 50% tennis classes, 50% business and communication, introduction to business, accounting 1 and 2, business law, speech, English 1 and 2, business math. Like, for example, there was a professor, so many young students, old students, they had a tough time with accounting. That's kind of the make or break it class on every college campus. But that's back when there was no computer, it was ledger sheets. And, there was one staff member who said, okay, you tennis students, we're going to, because the program kept growing and growing, is that, okay, we're going to pretend you have your own tennis business and you're going to be buying rackets, wholesale, selling into retail, and everything down the line. Mm-hmm. So we had introduction to teaching tennis, which we tied in with the group dynamics of the PTR. That was just a title of the class. Introduction to teaching tennis, group dynamics, camp and club management, pro shop management, team coaching, programming, pro shop management. This was a great one.
This is the best.
I came up with this. Yeah, pat myself on the back here.
For sure.
Dumb jock.
This is your prep school, man, right here.
Well, when you say that, I would just going to tell myself dumb jock. But I remember going to prep school, you walk in English class, and you're going to read 1 book a week.
Yeah.
And there's only 8 kids in your class. And then you walk into history, and you got to read 1 book a week. Remember, we were right next to Dartmouth. I remember taking the speed reading course at Dartmouth. Yeah. And I go through that with students today where, okay, read the titles, read the subtitles, read the first sentence in every paragraph. Yeah. Then read the whole thing, go back, read the questions, read the questions in the beginning. Yep. I do think, I could be wrong, but it's much easier to take the test. It's much easier to take the test it's much easier to give the test and take the test.
Yeah. Here we go, though. Drop the line right here.
Scientific approach to teaching tennis. Before that. Oh, yeah. Oh, here you go. This is one you like.
Drum roll.
Contemporary literature and tennis instruction.
Yeah, it's good.
Contemporary literature and tennis instruction. So there was assigned books, and I did the same thing. We were perceived as underwater basket weavers. I said, I'm going to make this tough. I had some teachers who tortured me, so now I'm on the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
And we made it tough. But, there was assigned books you had to read. And then, the teacher learns more than the student. So I'm in this classroom, and I've got
all the prep work. And
we had people that retired from the military. We had people that had graduate degrees. We also had people between the ages of 18 and 23, over 50%, and they really couldn't tell you what they did during that time. They were just kind of searching for themselves, and I think we all have to do that. It's like the Canadians go to Vancouver, Americans go to LA. People go certain places to find themselves. And then we had one class, it was just really career prep, but that's where it was the end, and it was a USPTA test. Speakers have to thank Peter Burwash. We did that. He was the first person. He called me up, came in on his own nickel.
Yeah, that's cool.
But Braden, Dennis Vandermeer, and all people with Jim, with his staff, I would consider Lair and Verdict initially were, to me, staff members of Braden's, of Vandermeer's. going to hang out with those guys in the summer at Sweetbriar. Greg Prizzuto, Tennis for Tots, early childhood development, wrote a book. I mean, Munchkin Tennis, Bill McKenzie, Jack Groppel, people that were on the Vic Braden staff. I remember Tommy Fye would love pro shops. I remember him coming out and doing a workshop on pro shops. Scotty Perelman, who we had on the podcast, he came and did team teaching. John Verdi, who ran a business in Dallas. Ben Ball would come in. He was the executive director of the Texas Tennis Association, teaches how to run tournaments. George Basho, I mean, that guy, the late George Basho, and what he did for the USPTA. Talk about a hard worker. And he, old school, he was a school teacher. We always had a host of visitors, visiting club pros, camp directors, college coaches. Certifications, we had the alphabet soup, we had the PTR, the USPTA, CPR, we talked about this before, NTRP, CompuTennis, USRSA, which is one that you can't BS your way through. You can BS your way through a group lesson, a private lesson, but you can't BS. I ask kids all the time, can you string a racket? Oh yeah, a little bit. No. Either you can string a racket, you can mount the racket, you can set it up, and you can get it done. Yeah. Training people to be umpires, I think of Steve Ulrich. I mean, he went through the program, and he was the same age as I was. I used to tease him that, hey, Ulrich, you got 7 college degrees. But he became like if not the best umpire, one of the best umpires in U.S. Open, Wimbledon. It's interesting if you're a U.S. umpire like Ulrich, all these tidbits is if there's 2 Americans in the final, which is not happening so much anymore on the men's side, but you can't have an American. Let's say there's 1 American playing, say, a German and American playing a Swede. The umpires could be from a neutral country.
All right.
We had a 15-hour lab. People who listen to me, they probably wouldn't know this, but I had the choice to have it be 12 or 15. You have a lab 12 or 15, and I said, 15.
For sure. Come on,
we're going to grind them out.
Yeah.
Again, no underwater basket weaving. I just tried to flip the story that we were going to be a comprehensive curriculum, a degree plan that was far from easy. There was 240 contact hours a semester. This is how people should be trained to teach tennis. 96 contact hours over 2 years. That's just lab, 15-hour lab.
960, right?
Yeah. Plus, you had to have at least, that one summer you had to go do an internship, and we made people keep practice logs. They had to come back.
Yeah.
Just drills alone. How many, what drills did you learn at Bollettieri's? What drills did you learn at Hopman?
I mean, I was lucky to work with 2 of your former students, Steve Campbell and Dave Nostrand.
Mark Jakes too, right?
And Mark Jakes was around. I mean, but especially Dave Nostrand. I first started working at the tennis college in Southern Utah. I was able to go through his old tennis tech stuff. And it was like, hey, name or, list 50 ways to do a peel-off drill.
Yeah.
Like I remember that. I mean, there was a lot of great material, but not easy.
Yeah, one
not an easy thing,
One test was, you get you get a 3-hour test, and it's just 4 pieces of paper stapled together and say, elaborate upon the return of serve.
Yeah, exactly.
You start with an outline. You servers return rituals. You just but like
anyway,
Campbell, Jakes, and Nostrand, just like junior players. I heard Paul McDonald say this one time. Once you spend a lot of time with someone, you can tell all sorts of stories. This goes on and on.
Yeah.
And I think from my mother, but just whatever adrenaline is, I remember what happened. This is how it went down.
Mm-hmm.
If you have reflective thought. But Nostrand and Jakes, they were both older. They came in very mature. I mean, Jakes was already an engineer. Steve Campbell.
Yeah, Dave was like 28, I think, or something.
Steve Campbell was a graphic artist, and how he found out about the program is I created this logo with the help of the students. That I like the name Tennis Tech. What are we going to be? Tyler Junior College?
Yeah.
No, we're going to be Tyler Junior College's Tennis Tech program.
Yeah.
It had to have something catchy to it.
Sure.
Not that I'm a marketing whiz, but Steve Campbell was working as a graphic artist for a large grocery department, actually the Brookshires. And, Brad Brookshire, he has so much to do with building SMU's tennis complex. There's so many things that just go, you get connected with people.
Yeah.
But I remember Steve making this big, poster for our office at Tennis Tech.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were really, I would say all 3 professionals, and then they said they wanted to make their living in tennis. They all love tennis.
Yeah.
That 960, that didn't include lecture hours. The lecture hours, just to tennis alone, would have been 364. So that's 1,324 hours. But that didn't include the weekend workshops, exams, assignments, outside study time, outside practice time. It was easily 2,000 hours training. Now PBI, their number was 450. People in the industry, it's a sad note that most people, if you hit the ball, they give you a racket, give you basketballs, and go teach.
Yeah.
And it's really awful. It's the tennis teaching industry is unregulated. Sometimes we go strong and say it's fraudulent, even criminal. I mean, when you're telling a young kid, you're winging it. You don't know what you're saying. And so one, you can replace money, but you can't replace that kid's time.
Yeah.
And we've met so many people over the years. You don't measure experience in years, but it's in case study.
Yeah.
Let me just go through a few more things and we'll sign off here.
Yeah.
Lab test. For every 3 hours of lab in lecture, let me get this correct, right? The teacher is given 3 hours. So if you have a 3-hour lecture class, you get 3 hours for the test. Well, we had a 15-hour lab. So I had a 45-hour window to give a test.
Yeah.
And I gave a 45-hour test. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And the students,
Off court, on court.
the students were the ones who, taught me how to run Tennis Tech because, I mean, I show up from Southern California and I'm told, well, you can have any attendance policy you want. And I said, oh, okay. They recommended, the administrators recommended 6 and you're out. So I didn't even take attendance. I mean, my ego is such, well, people were blowing my class off. But I remember Dennis Vandermeer coming, and people, of course, they had to pay extra fees, to go through what they called the tennis university, then take the test. People were sleeping in. Dennis Vandermeer's on campus, and people are sleeping in this. They didn't have the spirits of the Jim Mantles, where we were, how can we get to this part of the country to go listen to this guy talk for 2 days?
Yeah. Just a quick pause. Did you ever pick up any lingo in California? Like, did you show up in Texas and be like, yeah, man, that's pretty groovy? Or far out, man? Dude, was any of that in your vocabulary? I mean, I know you were a hick from New York, but did you pick up on any lingo? Just curious.
The term Valley Girl, that ring a bell?
Yeah, of course.
Valley Girl. And, I mean, I could tell stories where I was working at this pizza pub restaurant.
Yeah.
So I'm only, I'm a young guy. I go out to Vandermeer's, but I was over the age of 21, so I could get behind the bar and serve beer and wine at a pizza place. But it was a shock for me to meet kids from Southern California. Yeah. I mean, it's a different part of the country, it's a different time now. I think we're more connected, but for someone from upstate New York, and I went to this prep school in the woods in New Hampshire, and then all of a sudden, I was like, and I just wasn't around teenagers that were, it was a part-time job. And
that's what I mean. I didn't know if you anyway, go back to Dennis was sleeping in.
No, so the exam. So with all students had to keep a file. They had to have, okay, this is for drills. Yeah. This is for catchphrases and buzzwords. Mm-hmm. People, speakers came in, and we had you were supposed to write your notes, type your notes, and have plastic sheets. Yeah. And you had ring binders. Yeah. You see that in a German office. You know that. You spend time with your wife's German, and you look at, they have all, it's just so organized.
I feel like I picked that up from Dave because I definitely had the same thing. Like, okay, here's drills, here's corrective measures, all that kind of stuff.
Organization meant graduation, PIP, get your poop in a pile. It was just the opposite. If a professor says, hey, what we're going to do the last week of school is we'll have the exam on our last class. So it's going to be a 50-minute lecture class. They're going to give a 50-minute test. Yeah. And they're doing that so they can go home on vacation. And then they're so popular. The students go, I love this teacher. I love this teacher. But I'm like, no way. Vic Braden, you teach to the final bell. Yeah. You go bell to bell. Mm-hmm. And again, that comes back to boxing. With you tell kids, Jack Kramer, skip 3 minutes, 3 rounds minimum. You want to work up to going 15 rounds. Yeah. They got to know Jack Kramer is. Yeah. They got to know boxing. Yeah, exactly. But I think that's where today, the book Range, we have so many specialists and not enough generalists. Sure. So we went the opposite direction. So it wasn't like, I said, okay, you got to get in your car, they could be on campus or go back to their dorm or drive to their apartment. we gave them ample amount of time, but we would just make a list. Okay, this is what you need to bring. With exams, life gives you the test first and the lesson second. We had lots of them, written, book reports, filming presentations, the log of summer experiences, drill notebook, programming notebook, singles, doubles, corrective measures, all that.
Yeah.
Taking notes, take notes, rewrite notes, type notes, plastic sheets, ring binders, again, going through it. No computers.
Yeah, a little different today. No iPad.
Like say you have to, Aoife Wilson, she went through the program, a gal from Ireland, great. That's her maiden name, but she's a pro out in Northern Cal. And I remember one time you could only get a B if you handed in a paper and there's no bibliography. If you had a bibliography, you can get an A. Yeah. Because it was junior college. I had to make, okay, how can I work it out where, she came in the Irish education system's pretty stout, just like the beer. And I remember calling her up and said, you didn't, some kids, okay, bibliography, you got to help them out. So it was just, I go, Wilson, get up here. I go, no bibliography. I said, you can't get an A. And I remember she went, oh, well. So like an hour later, or those conversations you have with me where, we talked for an hour, but you didn't get to say one word. Let's just do the attendance policy, and then we could stop. Yeah. So I think the perception was you're just going to hit a few balls. Ed Collins had a book, coach out in San Diego. I remember going to his camp to observe him teaching tennis. Take your racket back. It was bend your knees. Take your racket back, bend your knees, $20, please. Yeah. Now it's $100. Yeah. So I mentioned the attendance policy came in from Southern Cal. I'll digress with Northern Cal. Someone told us, again, we have this large junior program. It's kind of fun. Someone just told me that, hey, so-and-so won the 16s, they won the doubles. Yeah. But not in Northern Cal, Southern Cal. But we have people teaching in all the 17 sections. Yeah. Didn't take attendance. But by the time I left, because the students were just slackers.
So initially,
blown off. Didn't even take attendance, but they're blown off. Dennis Vandermeer's there, and sleeping in. Vic Braden's coming into town, and you're not showing up, and no shows. So late, no shows. So I changed it where there was no such thing as a tardy. The door was locked as soon as the bell rang. The door was locked. Yeah, and so if you didn't make it by the bell, in 6 classes you were out.
So you became like a Mr. Hand from Fast Times.
Yeah, some people would definitely say it was militant. Start of class, you had signed seating by the end of it. Random name, beginning of class, random names pulled out of the hat. Question asked. Mm-hmm. Answer was filmed. There's a camera pointing right at you because I said presentation, demonstration. Yeah. Plus, I had to get to the point where I had to be clever on how can I test these students and not have to grade papers all day long.
Yeah. Stand up and explain the forehand. 2 minutes.
Oh, it'd be like 450 degrees on the serve. Yeah. It's like either you know it or you don't. Yeah. And if the student didn't know it, something I learned from my mother, you'd have to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. She didn't add that I'll find out. It was just say,
I don't know.
Say, I don't know. Yeah. Instead of going on and on. No, shut up. You don't know. Say it. She's a Jew. Say, shut up. You say, I don't know. Especially one of my brothers. He used to say that. She used to have him say that all the time. Last thing, first day of the class is to get to the bottom of this sheet. Okay. Didn't do this from the get-go, but wasn't too long into it. People would come in with their first day. And we would start in the fall, so we'd start when the U.S. Open was being played. And I get these kids coming in, and they weren't going to make the junior college team with all the foreigners. Maybe they weren't even given a fair chance. Yeah. Just like myself, way back when, the team was already picked. Yeah. So you go into a room. Remember Steve Young? He was there 5 years, 2 years as a student. He did a great job helping us out.
I was just thinking of Steve, the quarterback.
Actually, Jimmy Johnson. He knows Steve Young. Jimmy Johnson, who went to Tennis Tech, knows Steve Young, the quarterback. But Steve Young, I could digress. I mean, Steve Young worked for a company, made a video story, an autobiography of Wayne Gretzky. And I remember telling Young, you should do it with Jimmy Connors. How do you get a hold of Jimmy Connors? I said, I tell you what, just call Belleville, Illinois. His father died when he was very young. Just ask for the phone number for Gloria Connors.
Yeah.
And
done.
Yeah, so many stories. And the next thing you know, I mean, it didn't happen. Jimmy wanted $100,000 just to meet. This is tennis. Yeah. Wayne Gretzky said, I'll tell you what, let's just split it 50-50, but just make sure my dad's really part of it when you do it. Yeah. But, again, in all fairness to Jimmy, tennis is, like Harry Hopman said, it's going to be every man for himself. It's really not a team sport. You got to give college coaches so much credit for trying to make it the team sport. And they do, I think overall, the camaraderie's there. I don't think the player development's there. Yeah. So the first day of class, you go into a room, and there was other people, but I remember Steve Young is that very, easygoing guy. And you go in, it was just one of 7 strokes. You pull it out of the hat, and it might say, one-handed underspin backhand, and they wouldn't know it. You say slice. Yeah. Like, okay. Yeah, exactly. Or it could be, the forehand overhead serve. Mm-hmm. And then some of them they would try to be a comedian, and they were saying, no stories, no jokes. Yeah. Just tell us, how do you teach it? And we would film it. Yeah. So I talked to Dave Anderson today, who was on one of our podcasts. I just think of Rafael Fontamora has had some recognition in tennis. I mean, Craig Tiley, the people that we trained who got involved with training players in college tennis or in pro tennis. They became better known. Yeah. But it's all on film. And I mean, people couldn't go 1 minute. It would be take your racket back and step and follow through. I mean, seriously. Yeah. Yeah. And actually today it's amazing. Craig Carden, who's done a lot of things in tennis, he once said about coaching on the pro tour, you got to talk all day and say nothing. Yeah. And people are so good at it. So, the miss would be like the overhead, scratch your back point, come over the ball. I mean, stay down. You just knew going in. But it was almost like you had 2 types of students. But, they had the kids who could hit the ball a little bit, and they were really cocky. Yeah. So then my job was, okay, we got to turn here a little bit. Yeah, change that around a little bit. And there's some who were totally new to it.
It's kind of cool for this, as a student, to be able to go back and look at your progress, like anything as a teacher as well, to film yourself or even just audio, but kind of fun to go back and go, man, I can't believe I said that, right?
Yeah.
Or geez, I had no clue what I was saying.
Right. You have to get people to the point, 2 levels of ignorance. You don't know and you don't know. You got to let them know they don't know.
Yeah, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know.
Arthur Ashe Stadium, 23,000 people, how many people know the court's 78 feet long? In our world, people listening to these podcasts take the racket, twist it 8 times, turn it 8 times, 360 degrees, divide by 8 is 45. You don't know that. You don't know the grips. Yeah. You just don't know. No, we do know that people can coach. I think overall, first and foremost, what we do, it's kind of like character camp 101, but teaching is information transfer. I'll just stop right here, but with teaching, we'll get into that with how a lot of things unfolded. But we had on-campus experiences, lab experiences, off-campus. What do you do on a rainy day, summer? Mm-hmm. From a place, a legendary place like Mr. Hopman's with a great logo, the kangaroo in the middle, to some camp in Maine. Beautiful place with a handful of tennis courts. Yeah. The lab experiences.
Great.
But let's stop there and we can come back and I really would like to only spend one more session with us, then let's get into Vic because we're getting close to 52 weeks.
Yeah. Part 1, Tennis Tech, a lot of history there. Obviously, expand on so many different things, but I think really great for people to understand the history to it. And it was very unique, especially for its time.
Well, to be in a situation where just our lab, we had what we called guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And, so
They became champions.
what happened, I was so young, and they criticized me for being too young to teach tennis teachers. So the idea of like, well, I'm going to pursue my education, I'll do this. But what I decided was, because I remember taking grad classes at UT Tyler, and Ed Faulkner was an influence. Ed Faulkner's book. Ed Faulkner, he went to Cornell, and he wasn't interested in getting a degree. I'm just going to take classes that will make me a better tennis teacher. That's just so many thoughts with that. But for someone to say, okay, we're going to have these guinea pigs, and okay, they're going to dominate high school tennis. They're going to, get to the point where when I first got there, people said, kids from Tyler cannot compete with kids from Dallas. And I'm going, that's dumb.
Yeah.
The oxygen in the air is the same. What do you mean you can't compete with a kid who lives 90 minutes away?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
PE classes, the community dollar clinic, it was, looking back at it, let's say Dave Anderson said that in one of the podcasts, American tennis, or all of tennis, back to the future.
Yeah.
Granted, you talk about the grip on the forehand. People were wrong on the forehand. I wish someone had told me, just turn it here.
Yeah.
And, Braden was someone who certainly knew that, but, you've been playing tennis, 7 years.
Right.
All day, every day.
Some myelin.
And, but, like Wayne Bryant's a great force. I don't think enough people know about like the letters he's written about tennis in America. And he's such a positive guy, Pied Piper, did so many things with his sons once they made it in tennis, as far as doing all these pro-ams and celebrity events. Great showman. But, the private sector, and then say, well, okay, here's the USTA. It's not the big bad evil empire, but the governing body of tennis. And it was, some of his writings was addressed to the USTA, and the private sector. Where do players really come from? A family is going to do a better job. A family does a better job producing a player than a federation. Yeah, Dave Fish said that in one of the recent podcasts. Yeah. But it's not go with the best and forget the rest. You can learn from everybody. You students, you're going to learn from your students. You're going to learn from your experiences. It's just constant learning. You want to be a lifelong learner. But yeah, we'll talk more about tennis tech. And again, I have to try to go a little bit faster. But no, there's value. There's value then to get into the politics. Like what happened, why did this person get the job? Yeah. Why was this decision made? And it's like you and I just disagree. You're A and I'm B, but then there's C. That's where the battles start. And, I really do think if you're right, it's pretty easy to keep fighting. If you just know you're right, like, no, you don't tell a kid to toss the ball high. Yeah, you just don't tell them that.
The world is round.
Yeah, and I shouldn't say just kids; it's adults too. You think of you can't replace money, but to think of injury prevention. Sure. But no, I would say that tennis teaching, it's still, even though there's all these PTMs, do they really have a curriculum? Yeah. And what's their curriculum based on? And it's too politically correct. Well, here are the parameters. Well, no. It's the court's 78 feet. Braden, dimensions of court, physical laws, no coach's unique theory, no on and on coach's opinion. And so, there's many things that unfolded where, and to this day, it's, too many people are in the dark. And the solution to problems in tennis are education. Yeah. Check your ego at the door.
All right. We'll continue the conversation on tennis tech next week. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening this week. Check us out, GreatBaseTennis.com, GreatBase Tennis on social media. Leave us a review on Apple. We appreciate it.
My game was a wreck when I went to Tennis Tech.
But when you left, it was the best.
There you go.
You know, I'm a poet. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you in
thanks.
the next one. Adios.